This is Clint Riddle with the Booge Crew. Booge? Hey, welcome to the Booge Crew podcast. This is Clint Riddle. This video you're about to watch is a production from our shared pedagogy, opinions, and bad habits. The Booge Crew is an art and art teacher podcast. The Booge Crew is made up of 4 high school art teachers that work at the same school and meet in the Booge every morning. The term Booge came about when a cold gray teacher's lounge was converted into a warm, safe meeting place for teachers to relax and air out any frustrations, concerns, or celebrations. We discuss various topics, trends, and share differing opinions. We upload content weekly intended for our students, peers, and, well, you. Our goal is to challenge each other and you in your understanding of art. If you do like this video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up, or even better, share it on one of your preferred social medias? On one of your preferred, I don't know who wrote this, on whatever it is that you use. Just go ahead and share it on that. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Even if you don't like it, that's part of the deal. Thanks so much. Enjoy.
Do it?
I've noticed how weird my thumbs are ever since Zoom.
Yeah. Clint, I'm glad you brought that up. I've been meaning to talk to you about your weird thumbs.
They do. Wait.
I'm I don't know why.
Oh, yeah, they bend. That is strange.
You guys know I have weird double jointed thumbs. Have we ever talked about that?
I think you have monkey fingers.
Let me see them.
You have monkey fingers.
Let's see it.
You can tell now, but when I was born, I couldn't straighten this thumb and I couldn't bend this thumb. So they were both super locked in like this. And all the doctors wanted to do surgery, and my mom refused, and basically would sit there and while we watch TV and stuff work on him, and eventually they would open or close depending on which one, and get stuck that way, and I'd have to wiggle back, and now they're kind of crap. So weird.
So I thought I would give a little background about why I'm thinking about this, and like I said, I've wrestled with a couple things this week, but my dad, I have a few memories of my dad on Saturdays, and he was not a watch a movie kind of guy. So I remember very vividly the stuff that he would watch on Saturdays and that I would catch glimpses of. And I remember he would watch Man of La Mancha, which is the musical version of Don Quixote by Cervantes. So this is an illustration by Gustave Doré of Quixote's whole... Are you guys familiar with Don Quixote?
Nope.
Only the wishbone version.
Only the what?
The wishbone version.
So I think I listened to it on audio, and I didn't have any real great memories from that, but I remember Man of La Mancha. I watch it all the time. The premise is that this country squire reads so much historical fiction about knights and all this stuff that he goes crazy. And so he fancies himself as a knight and envisions that his whole goal now is to sally forth righting all wrongs. And so he just goes out, sort of like early vigilantism, almost like an early delusional superhero kind of deal, but he's a knight. And I think it was written kind of as a farce on chivalry and those types of things. But in Man of La Mancha, the juxtaposition is clear between... There's this one line, I think it's over here. Maddest of all, to see the world as it is and not as it ought to be. It's at this crucial moment in the musical where he has to face was it worth it? Cervantes, was it worth it to write this story? And he uses that line. And I've always thought my whole life how interesting that is, that in certain instances you see people acting crazy, and like in the story, the crazy people or the crazy person has a clearer vision of what's important than the normal people. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's such a theme throughout everything. Doomsday preppers, when you're there's no reason why anything would happen, and now look, I haven't been able to get groceries in a week. It's God, I wish I had a storm cellar full of green beans right about now.
Yeah, they get it.
Yeah, but I think that's a theme. I told Clint my weird mission that I put myself on is to watch all the Marvel movies in a row. And that's like one of the big themes with the big scary guy and Thanos is like everyone, all the bad guys want to do this like good deed that everyone else sees as bad and they see as good. Like he wants to have I think it's there's a thread throughout. I don't know, a lot of myths there.
Yeah.
That Don Quixote and what you just showed really reminded me of a movie that I watched as a child called Baron Munchausen.
Yeah.
Y'all ever watch that?
Is that a Terry Gilliam movie?
Oh,
maybe it's not.
You're the only person it is. You're the only one that knows these names. Like
Terry Gilliam. He directed like Time Bandits but he directed, I think, The Fisher King, which is another movie about madness, and it's almost like Don Quixote, but Robin Williams, you'd appreciate, is this homeless guy who thinks he's on a quest to find the Holy Grail.
Gotcha.
And I think Terry Gilliam was gonna make a Don Quixote with what's his nuts, Pirates of the Caribbean, Johnny Depp.
Oh,
Johnny
be
Depp
cool.
was gonna be.
Yeah, they like started filming it and then lost funding. I remember watching like a behind the scenes thing.
Yeah, so I think Terry Gilliam would be a crazy like case study of somebody who's really interested in this concept and explores it a lot in his work. I think Munchausen is one of his movies, but I can't remember.
It is. I just checked.
Okay.
It is. But yeah.
Are we talking
No,
Munchausen's like the mental disease where people think that they're sick? Or is
Baron
it someone's name in the movie?
Munchausen.
It is a character in the movie, but I don't know if it relates to that disorder, like if it was named after him. So anyway, I started looking into this to see if with modern neuroscience anyone has found a connection between craziness and insanity. Like, is that a blurry line neurologically? And I found this incredible article. It's pretty lengthy, but Nancy Andreasen talks about this. She was in like a writer's circle.
You said craziness and insanity. Do you mean creativity and?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, creativity. Okay. And so maybe it's easier to take the distinction here, genius and illness, the distinction between those two things. She was a writer, and then she went and got her doctorate in neuroscience or something like that. But she was at Iowa State, and apparently at that time there were all these great writers who came to this Iowa State writing workshop, and she's like, this is a great lab setting. I can talk to these people, see if they have a history of mental illness in their family, see if they suffer from it, and turn it into a case study. So this is her definition of creativity, something that's novel and useful. And she said that she did notice there was a correlation between genius and illness, as well as both genius and illness related to heredity. So among these writers, a huge number of them had parents, siblings, children who also suffered from, at the time they would have called it schizophrenia, and then they sort of changed it to mood disorder, which included depression and other things. But she was finding that in a lot of cases. And I don't know how important it is to get into some of this stuff. That creation, like in the case of Newton, is an apple falling on your head and instantly it's like, oh, I have this idea. Well, he had decades of study and observation and goes through this whole creative process. So it's not realistic to think of creativity as like just occurring out of nowhere. And do you guys remember this Sheng Wang clip where he's like, if you find one ripe avocado, that's a blessing. If you have 5 ripe avocados, that's a crisis.
Yes.
But she points out in her article that intelligence and genius or creativity aren't the same thing. That you can have a 200 IQ, but it's like having too many avocados. You can only do so much with it. So it's not that being smart is the same as being genius.
Yeah, I think it's the prioritization of like things.
Yes, and I think,
for example, I know a producer who gets so like involved in their work that they, I don't know, this was one occasion, but they were working in their office and just working, editing, and then ended up like soiling themselves because they were editing and not focusing on like
Basic human needs.
yeah.
And
So,
and I take that comment two ways. It's the prioritization almost of like how you see things and interpret things. So it's brain functioning prioritization. But it's also like what gets said all the time is that truly creative but also truly ill people are living in their own little world. It's like you could get so fixed on editing that video that the restroom isn't even a notion. You don't even think about it.
Could you go back a slide again?
I can go back a slide, I think.
Sorry.
Let me just make sure that...
I had a thought. Oh, okay.
One more?
So
Or is this the
No.
one?
that's it. The high intelligence does not equal high creativity. I had a different thought about that.
Go.
I remember learning, or it's kind of similar thought, but I remember reading about when the government first took, they thought that STEM was the way to go, and they took all the arts and out of learning because they wanted us to beat the other countries and be the first to discover these things and go to the moon and all these things. But all these scientists came out and wrote and fought for the arts because they thought, the one thing that stuck with me, I'm not making it sound very good, but is that if you can have all the intelligence in the world, but if you don't have the creativity to think about a new way or to be ingenious with it and think about a new way to put it together, then what are we doing that's better than anybody else?
Yeah.
They talked to us about that at the beginning of the year, right? Like that's what are Amazon and Google and all the big companies looking for when they're hiring. And like number 2 is always creativity now.
Yeah.
Right, because it can be, not that anyone can be intelligent to the point of genius, but that's something you can physically, you can do. You can read the books and you can do all your homework. For students out there, you can have straight A's across the board and do all of your homework the way it's supposed to be done. But if you leave and you don't have any new ideas, or you don't even understand how to think creatively, how is that going to set you apart from anybody else that's doing the same thing you're doing?
So, like we advocate for and teach a lot, it doesn't really matter if you memorize all the facts if you're that kind of smart. It matters in how you can reorder the world and how you can look through things in your own little existence. And I think that's spot on. So where did my screen go with my stuff? Come on, Sheng Wang. There he is.
Your screen.
I love that clip. It is. I love that guy.
Super good. So have you guys seen A Beautiful Mind? Because I don't really want to play this necessarily.
You know what my answer is going to be, so you might as well play it.
It's so good.
So, Clint,
time out. Lauren, did you get my wishbone reference earlier?
No. Was I sitting here? I walked away for a second.
No.
I got you,
All right.
Clint. I got you.
I'm the kind of person who is like
Didn't get it.
watching Marvel movies every night. I'm not.
You probably had cable. That's why you don't know what it is.
Yeah, us PBS public TV.
Yeah.
Wishbone was a
Ever
dog.
watched Wishbone, man?
I lived
That
with
was
my
like
grandparents
in
when I
middle
was a
school.
kid.
That was like the substitutes, like, or the teachers, like,
Yes.
it's a movie day.
I remember, like, I know the general reference. I don't think I've ever seen it. But also, my memory sucks, and maybe I just don't remember watching it.
Yeah, it's possible.
I honestly remember as a kid watching a lot of Brady Bunch and a lot of Wheel of Fortune because I lived with my grandparents when I was like
That's fair. Both
Power Rangers with my brother.
Both are wonderful. So
Right.
anyway, go ahead. Sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
Nope, I was going to take it a different direction.
Go, take it.
No, I was just going to say my children are all of a sudden obsessed with Scooby-Doo. It's taking me back.
Nice.
But
Anyway,
Like the old school stuff?
old school Scooby-Doo. That's all
Do
they
you-
want to watch.
Do you remember when Scooby-Doo would have like Batman and Robin on there? I would lose my mind. I'm like, they're in the same universe? Are you kidding me?
Or
And then just when I could wrap my head around Batman living in the same universe as Scooby-Doo, the Harlem Globetrotters would be on. And I'd be like, what? I can't understand this. This is insane. It was awesome. So, okay.
Clip.
You want to watch the clip?
Yes.
Okay. Clint often says that he walked into my room when I was organizing Prismacolors, and he thought I had gone all beautiful mind on him.
Oh my gosh. I should have taken a picture.
Stop talking so I can hear it.
How's the weather? Did you like it? Was it fun?
I don't think there's anything to be heard.
I don't know why you can't hear it. There is audio. Oh, I had the volume off.
Speaking of genius.
That ain't me. I want to exit out of this. Okay, there we go. So these little like connections everywhere, if this will pull back up. Don't be a hater. Okay, so you see these things. John Nash, I didn't show this scene, but he's in a bar with his friends, according to, the book, which became a movie, that this hot chick walks in with all her friends, and he has this revelation, and he explains it to his buddies. He's like, if each one of us goes up and tries to talk to the hot girl, all of her friends will feel slighted. She's going to reject all of us because she's out of our league anyway, and then none of us go home with dates. So what we do is every one of us goes up and asks someone different, and then the last person, she's left and she's going to dance with that guy anyway. And he turned that into an economics theory that won him the Nobel Prize. So that's a different scene in the movie. It's like he saw things differently, and because of that, he was able to come up with this idea like out of nowhere. Well, he also then feels like aliens are trying to recruit him, and like voices are talking to him. And he has all of these. This is his office. The other image here is his like shed or something. And nobody knows that this is going on. And so Jennifer Connelly's character is finding out how much time he's invested in these conspiracy theories and all these wild notions. So
didn't he have a kid at that point?
Yeah, I think so.
That just seems unrealistic to me. Like,
yeah, I don't.
Like, how does the wife not know? Where?
Well, in the
or
movie,
like not even question like, hey, you've been gone for 16 hours. Like,
but you got to remember he was coming up with these brilliant theories, these economic theories, and so he's off working on that too. So he had just switched over from economics to Bonkerstown and was coming up with all this other stuff. And I don't know his diagnosis, and I think he had actual schizophrenia, where he thought his perception of the world was disjointed, and that's what I think is so fascinating is that the author of this, Dr. Andreasen, points out that some creative people may have a subclinical variant of schizophrenia. So it loosens their associations, which enhances their creativity. So we grow up thinking 1 + 1 is 2, and then a creative person is just not crazy enough that their associations are loosened. So they see 1, 1 and a cross, and it makes like these funky H's or something. And they're like, oh, 1 + 1 is actually, a box with a cross in it. Just some crazy visual interpretation of that. And then you're like, oh, okay, I wouldn't have seen that. In the book, one of Nash's friends asked him, how could you believe that people were trying, to have you save the world? And he says, because I had these supernatural beings came to me in the same way that my mathematical ideas did. And so he couldn't tell the difference about what was real and what wasn't. And I love this that she writes. Some people see things others cannot, and they're right. We call them geniuses. Some people see things others cannot, and they're wrong, and we call them mentally ill. And John Nash was both. It's just wild to me how close those two things are. And then people like Dali would try to get themselves into a dissociative state, using this paranoid critical method. Like if we could just somehow alter our consciousness. Or Trent Doyle Hancock is famous for having his own little world now. And I don't think anybody believes he's crazy, but he's got these fully developed characters and these mounds and like a history, and like Tolkien was crazy. He made up languages and histories of vast empires of people, and wrote these amazing novels. But nobody looked at him and was like, "You're nuts." But they were able to like live in their own paracosm, this alternate world, and do it so fully and so well that, gosh, it's beyond me, is all I can say. So,
Jody, it reminds me of when you were talking about like June's drawings and stuff, and Lee's kind of now at that age too, where his like imagination is super blooming, where it's like they do live in their own little world and they're so creative, and there's stuff that they come up with is so interesting. You don't want to like squash it. It's like this tender little flower that you're trying to take care of. But it's interesting that kids do that automatically, and somehow we grow out of it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that scares society so much, and maybe nobody wants to talk about this in art education, is that society, at least subconsciously, is terrified of the notion that we will continue to ask students to persist in that slightly disassociative state, and then we'll just have a bunch of mentally ill people running around because they never got grounded, and they never, taught themselves how to see the difference between what's real and what isn't.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of like, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I'm kind of weirdly bothered when people are like, on Zoom, you should dress professionally. And like, we all kind of dress unprofessionally.
How dare you?
At times. But it's this kind of thing where it's like, fit into this box, or like show kids that it's okay to kind of be a little bit different. And
yeah, that's what we talked about last time. Like, trying to be different doesn't make you creative, but it's not bad to try to hold on to those things that don't keep you in lockstep conformity either. It's that weird middle ground.
Yeah. I totally see how I love that slide that talks about how maybe the creative people have a slight form of being able to see things more loosely or differently already. And we do, and I do think kids have that naturally, but then at some point, they're embarrassed by it or somebody squashes it. But some of us can hang on to it. Because I don't know, I do feel like our brains work a little bit differently than the norm, but maybe that's being self-absorbed. But I have a hard time. I seek out people like you guys and like me who can have these conversations, and this thrills us. Whereas I feel like 80% of the population would be like, not interested in even this discussion, maybe because I don't know.
And
it just,
I know this is a sore subject, Lauren, in particular, but this is kind of why I'm like, no, I'm not going to watch Tiger King. Like, I get that everybody's doing it, but there's so much more out there that if I don't just follow along in lockstep conformity with what everybody else is doing, maybe I'll discover something that nobody else is even looking for, So why do we try to be so the same all the time?
Right. But Tiger King's super great and funny.
No, oh my.
I think my qualm against you not watching it because everyone else is just like, if everyone finds this thing great, it just makes sense that you could find some joy and happiness in it too, rather than pushing it into this other room where, because everyone else likes it, you've got to not do it. But I think everyone does that to a degree, right? Like, you find some awesome band that you like so much, and then when everyone else likes it, you're like, I hate them now.
I listen to bands that haven't even been invented yet, so I don't know.
He's the kid at art school in the drawing class who doesn't like Vincent Van Gogh or Pablo Picasso
because they're so passé.
But aren't those kids kind of great too? Like, I love when we talk about Andy Warhol and you're like, is this art? And like, everyone, the quick answers are always yes. And then the kids that sit there and think about it for a second are the ones that are able to say like, no, you didn't come up with that label. Like that, Yeah. Those are the creative thinkers.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But like, Carol Baskin killed her husband, and you're not even gonna know about it.
Wait, that guy's dead?
The Tiger King reference. That's not her husband.
No, he's not dead.
Guys, I don't know what's happening right now.
I'm in the middle.
He took it over. I can't remember his name. John
Cusack.
Ruskin, or whatever his name is. I don't know.
John Goodman.
Brandon and I tried to watch it a couple nights ago, and I couldn't finish the first episode. I have such a bleeding heart. It's kind of embarrassing. I felt so bad for the animals. I could not watch it a day. I couldn't watch it a minute late. Like, I just felt like this whole thing is so wrong. I don't know. I hope the funds from it go to like freeing those, I don't know, or doing something, putting that out of business.
I do think it gave people a lot of awareness. A lot of people I talked to were like, oh my gosh, I went there and like visited that zoo because it's not that far from us. And they're like, I feel terrible about it now. It's like that everyone takes a picture riding an elephant in Thailand and find out that that's actually terrible for the elephants and they're living awful lives. It's like, it does make you think a little bit about the behind the scenes factor.
Let me give you something else to watch, since there are options in this world. I don't know how well this holds up. I haven't seen it in a while, but the movie Real Genius has Val Kilmer in it, and you should check it out. I think it's early 80s flick, maybe mid 80s.
Look at Val Kilmer and that'll tell you how long ago it was.
Yeah, Val Kilmer was a teenager.
Have you seen him now?
Yeah, oh yeah. Poor guy.
Didn't
He's not aged well.
He did a solo like play about Mark Twain, didn't he?
Did he really?
I think so.
I know that
Mark Twain.
I think he had like throat cancer and he had to have like a part of his throat removed, and he wears scarves all the time now or something. I don't know. But anyway, Real Genius. If you want to spread the message that we should all try in some way or another to march to our own drummer, Real Genius is the movie for it, because every one of those geniuses is a weirdo in that movie.
I kind of wanted to bring something up that I'm finding out, even though we're weeks ahead. So if you're watching this podcast, you just turned in on our timeline the Basquiat prompt, and we asked the question, what kind of art do you like more, a Basquiat style piece or a more realistic piece? And across the board, through all grades and all classes, almost every single kid is answering that, some have a preference, but they're saying that what's interesting about the Basquiat style pieces is that you can tell something's going on in their mind that's not quite straight and normal. So what's interesting to them is to look at it and try to wonder what that artist was thinking. Whereas looking at more traditional styled art, they know exactly kind of like what that artist was looking at, and they could see the artistic reasoning behind their art. And I do think that's kind of interesting. Like maybe those more interpretive pieces are because they're hinting at a little bit more of this, creative, mentally ill world.
And I think that that's super key to try to stress to students, is that modern and postmodern art is the shift from interrogating the piece to try to figure out what the piece is giving you, moving to looking at the piece and asking, what is the artist about? What was the process about? So it's not even about the image or the object in front of you anymore. It's about all the behind the scenes stuff. What was Basquiat thinking? How did he make this? And maybe if people got that simple message, they could look at it with at least some freshness or some generous skepticism of saying like, oh, so it's not just that he's unskilled. There's more to it. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Were you guys seeing that with your kids too, turning stuff in? I thought that was so interesting that like kids from
mine were pretty equally spread.
Yeah, it's a pretty
one
good
person who it was kind of funny. Somehow it turned into a rant about Rothko.
Yes, I saw that one. I don't like Basquiat, but I like him 1,000 times more than Rothko. I hate Rothko.
Oh, I'm dying to know who that kid was.
I will tell you after we're done.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
That's super fun.
I empathized with that student. I was like, I get it. That has nothing to do with the question, but I get it.
But that is kind of the point of, that's two different messages. Like Rothko was all about look at these color fields and have an emotional response to them, and he's trying to recreate this emotional response. Whereas Basquiat, it's look at all this, try to interpret what was going on in my brain. Like they have two different purposes, and we really kind of compared them like they're
I think
the same intent.
Sorry, go ahead.
That was all I had to say. Forever.
Jody, did you have something?
I was going to say a lot of my kids just had one-worded answers to that, and I was kind of bummed because I wanted to know why they felt a certain way. So next time, if you guys are watching, elaborate, because I'm genuinely curious, and I think might be beneficial to think about why you like one or the other. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Clint.
I just had a thought about like this stuff of the craziness, and I'm associating it with more what society would call like sane crazy people, and thinking about artists that approach things differently, and the similarities that came to mind were like these people make things with a message that people don't necessarily agree with, but they believe in what they're making. And so like somehow they think they're right, even though everyone's telling them no. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are telling them no. So like the idea of thinking 1 + 1 is a box with a cross in it, and like standing firm and saying, no, that's what it is. That's what I see. And I think that's an interesting like quality personally that these potentially crazy people have, is they see the value in what they see. That makes sense?
Yeah, but I think
they don't question other people's notions. Is kind of what you're saying. Like when someone says no, it's not a box with a cross in it, it's two. They kind of stand their ground. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's like they're just not phased. Like where if like my daughter, if I tell her she's wrong about something, and maybe it's just because it's coming from me, she gets worked up and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was wrong. If it's like, no, baby, that's not how you spell this word, she'll freak out. And when in reality, like, yeah, if you use, like, if you're going with phonetics, this would be right, and like, I think maybe like people who don't bend to what like society is telling them.
I think I understand, and I think I agree that in a lot of ways, whether you're talking about entrepreneurs starting a business or creative minds starting a movement, that indomitable spirit of like, nope, this is my vision, this is how I'm going to do it, and you can't tell me otherwise, and you can't stop me. I think you have to have that tenacity to go out and make it happen. And that actually reminds me of the thing in Whiplash. Have you guys seen that movie? Great movie. But okay, Lauren, thank you for that. At the end, they're in a club, and the teacher is talking to the student that he kind of bullied, and he's like, I'm always too hard on students. And the kid's like, aren't you afraid that you're going to make him quit? And he's like, no, because if you're supposed to be the next Charlie Parker, the next genius jazz musician, you won't quit. You can't quit. And so he's like, that's kind of the test, is if you can make it through and nobody can make you quit, you're going to make it happen.
I have this is so interesting because the first thought I went to was my students who draw in a certain style that is their style. And you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, but yes. It's not really their style.
I rolled my eyes. Let me.
Yeah, and they, no matter what you try, if you're saying, I'm going to teach you these other ways, I'm going to try to teach you these ways to help you develop, and then you can go back to that style, they're still like, nope, sorry, you're not going to teach me anything. I'm going to draw this cartoon animal for the rest of this year, and then I have to fail them because they're not learning or adapting or changing. And I just want to be careful here before we tell them how genius they are. Because
okay.
It drives me.
But I would say this, like,
not great quality.
Do you remember the student that we were going to make the T-shirt about? Yeah. For the state vase and the state vase.
Something like that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, but
sounds like horrible.
But he honestly did do stuff that was different, and it was his style, but it wasn't his copying of someone's style. It wasn't his infantile gesture to cling to the first thing they found and liked. That's different.
I'm gonna make this real clear for the kids. If you learned it on YouTube, it's not your style.
No, you're just aping. You're you're copying, and you're copying the first thing you encountered, and that is short-sighted. That's not tenacious.
Well, I don't know that I agree with that.
Oh, Clint Riddle.
Uh-oh.
Come on, Riddle.
Jay, how did you learn how to paint?
How did I learn how to paint? Okay, so can I go back a little bit? Because I learned how to draw by copying comic books. And I was the kid in junior high and high school where I was like, this is my style, this is my jam. I love to do comic book type illustration. And that took me to a certain length, but then I was always wanting more. I learned to paint by being dissatisfied with my current ability. And I learned to paint by going through the atelier system, essentially. I was apprenticed by a master.
And so, just give me a few of the things that you did as a atelier.
Copy. So Charles Barg made drawings, and I copied Barg's drawings. But here's the thing. I wasn't trying to copy Barg's style. I was trying to figure out how to faithfully recreate an object and to render in a way that was beyond my current level of ability. So I was working on rendering, I was working on value, I was working on angles and proportions, general to specific. I was working on big concept stuff. I wasn't like, anime eyes are dope.
And you were copying with the motivation to get better at your own drawing, not to
be the
claim
best.
it as your own.
Yeah, I never had a desire to be the best Bargist in the whole world.
I get what you're saying, though, Clint. Like, I understand. And kids are going to look at that and be like, well, how many times have we watched a Proco video and copied what he did as a way of learning?
I don't think copying is bad. I think only, and I can only say myopically, clinging to something because you don't know any better. That's just not opening yourself up to people who are wise and have more experience than you.
Right. Don't go with the style that's easiest because someone taught you how to learn everything and figure out your own.
I can get behind that.
Okay. I do appreciate you fighting it, though, because that's a very good point.
Yeah, I like it.
I think we're over an hour. Maybe not on this.
What?
No, let me look. I don't know. I'm going to kill it right here, though.